Oh, oh my goodness, we are back. I have somehow found the microphone, found the stream, and I'm making my one last stand, my last hurrah. The remember the Alamo, but remember the CawCast. Josh Lane presents to you. I'm back for one last recording, and man, I got to talk some Hawks. And when I talk Hawks, I have to get the main man to come back. He's always been there, always helpful, very intelligent. I had to go get Glenn to join me on this first part of this final recording. Glenn, how are you today?
I'm good, and I'm really happy that you decided to do one more of these before you put it out on ice. I hope this is not a forever done initiative on your part, because I always enjoyed it. But if it's something you need to step away from for a while, glad you're doing one more, and I'm honored to be a part of it. I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh man, I'm just excited to talk. There's so much content, at least media-wise, with basketball and basically anything nowadays that I'm actually like spending more time just listening to everybody else talk instead of planning out my own show. But yeah, I'm taking trying to do my last hoorah, and maybe one day in the future we'll see. But I just wanted to make it official and just get everything off my chest. So right now, here's my last attempt to get Peachtree Hoops to put nothing but CawCast posts all over their front page. That's right, Brad, if you're listening, I want you to put this on the top 4 in the carousel, even if it just might be one article. Make it happen. All right. All righty. So, man, it's been a heck of a season, Glenn. I haven't given my thoughts, my opinions much in the beginning of the season. Last that everyone's heard of me is kind of my thoughts during the draft and how angry I was in terms of just trades and direction and just different things happening. And well, half a season has gone by, and I don't know, maybe my opinion has changed. Maybe I still have some stuff, but I will say this. I am so glad. Like, I have watched many bad Hawks teams in the past. Many good teams, but many bad teams in the past. And this is possibly the most fun and interesting bad Hawks team I've ever watched. Because, Glenn, to me, the Hawks are doing what I hoped and prayed and dreamed that they would do. They're in these close games, and it's not because of veterans. It's because of the young guys. Like, the young guys are getting experience. Coach Lloyd Pierce is putting the young guys in at end of games to close out, to get them to know what it's like to finish a game and not just throwing the veterans out there. This is everything I honestly could hope for and rebuild. And I am so glad that Lloyd Pierce he's actually low-key been kind of doing a good job in my opinion. But I don't know. This season has just been enjoyable to watch because we knew what was going to happen at the beginning of the year, but we're getting the young guys out there. Am I missing anything? Well, rather, Glenn, what are your thoughts of the season so far? Just give me everything, all craziness.
Yeah, I think fun is the right word for me. I've been enjoying watching the team a lot. Trae Young, we people can in perpetuity talk about whether the Hawks made the right decision on draft night, but Trae Young is on this team. He's this point guard, and he's a really fun player to watch. He has an incredible ability, dribble pass. The shot comes and goes. I think it's going to be fine in the long term. There aren't many more guys in the league more fun than watching John Collins play at the rim, and then he's showing some shooting prowess too. And in kind of a sneaky way, Kevin Herter, you just take a quick look at him, and he doesn't jump out at you as someone who's an impressive athlete, but he'll do something now and then where you go, wow, he really got up for that dunk, and also just he looks like an elite shooter, and and even other personalities on the team. Bazemore is not going to be the next great Hawks team, but he's a fun guy to kind of watch play. He celebrates when his teammates do things. It's been fun to watch Alex Lynn kind of grow a little bit. Not sure how far he's going to be able to kind of advance this game in the next year or two. But there are many fun aspects of this team, and so I've been really enjoying the season. Not having much heartburn or any sort of negative kind of feelings at all. It's just been fun. Obviously, they need more pieces over the next few years to kind of become something real that you want to see them chase something meaningful. But for where they are right now, I think they're doing fine, and they are a lot of fun to watch for a number of reasons.
Yeah. You mentioned Kevin Herter doing things. I know nothing about the NBA draft, and I know I've told people this, so knew nothing. I knew nothing about Kevin Herter. Watching him play is always just fun because it's like that random. It's like a jukebox. You don't know what you'll get in the sense of his skill set. He had a pass where he took a pass in the post earlier in the year, and I saw him. It was just a tap pass to the corner, but he basically took it from the paint and just tap passed it, and coming from a 90-degree angle to a corner player to shoot the three. I think they may have missed the three the player did who he passed it to, but that was just one of those things. I was like, wow, that was just instant recognition. It's like one of those things that he read the floor before he got the ball and knew what the best play would be. And that's just something you don't see from a rookie. A lot of Trae Young stuff, his passing ability. There are just some things where he just throws the ball up because he knows like Alex Len or Dwayne Dedman is naturally going to be taller than the guy that's switched off of him on a pick and roll. And it's not like, I guess you would say an open pass, but it's definitely things he does like when you watch football, he throws guys open with his passes. It's some next level stuff that I'll say I never saw from the last couple of point guards here. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's been a heck of a season so far.
Yeah,
having fun
with the draft.
I made my one appearance at a Hawks game. They lost to it was in January, and they lost to the Magic that game. Which, Glenn, I'm pretty sure. Fun fact. I don't even know if it's a fun fact, but I'm pretty sure every single game that I've seen the Hawks play the Magic, they've lost. Like, this goes back to I remember when they released the old red uniforms on Thanksgiving. They played the Magic. They lost. I went to the playoff series, both games in that playoff series. And you know which one I'm talking about. They lost both. They lost this game, and I'm pretty sure I went to another random game. So
it sounds like
Hawks,
you're
if you want
0
to
for
tank,
6 or 0 for 7.
though you can't admit it, just invite me to all Atlanta Hawks versus Magic games, and it's a guaranteed loss.
So that's like 6 or 7 games you've seen them play against the Magic in person.
Glenn, the trade deadline is coming up.
It is.
Were you able to see that?
Yeah, we have about a week, less than a week now. We have 5 days now.
Glenn, I think I lost your sound. Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hold on. I'm writing this down where we are at in the podcast. Let me test the sound on my end real quick.
I can hear you. Let me check my audio settings.
Of course it's me. Okay, let's try this. Hold on, I'm trying to fumble around. Okay, so I don't know what it is. It's like my headphones won't make sound, but Let me see. What could it be? This is annoying. Okay. Is it my headphones? Let's see. Okay, I don't know what it was. I can suddenly hear again.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I really hope. Okay, let me just start over about the trade deadline. Sorry, I don't know what that was. That's really weird.
No worries.
Oh, podcasting.
Yes.
Okay, let me start this over. Okay. Reset. Start. Okay, so Glenn, I understand that, well, the trade deadline is coming up and we've seen some interesting moves. Um, before we actually get into what impacts Atlanta, was there anything that you saw around the league that, I don't know, might be interesting? Do the Atlanta Hawks, they don't have a shot at Anthony Davis, do they?
Yeah, it's funny because I heard some national media voice. I can't remember who it is, and I follow everyone. I listen to everybody's podcast. I read everyone just because they're sourced, and I crave actual sourced information. But someone made the comment: every team should be calling the Pelicans about Anthony Davis, and I was like, really? Every team, like even Cleveland, Atlanta. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not every team, but I would think that the possibility of the Hawks landing Anthony Davis is as close to 0% as you can get it. So that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Wow. You know, the funny thing is that I thought that whole saga was very interesting. Just listening to him say, he wants to go someplace else. Players do what you want to do. It's very entertaining when you're not the ones involved in the drama. I will say that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in a way I feel for Pelicans fans, but I'm not a very emotional fan. I'm more of an intellectual fan, that's not me being critical of emotional fans. I mean, that's what probably drives the most people to become fans is kind of riding the emotional waves of the team that you root for. There certainly are times I feel kind of more emotionally engaged, but I would hope the Pelicans fans appreciate that Anthony Davis is giving them the opportunity to trade him when he has a good bit of value, when they can get a good return rather than just kind of playing it coy and kind of getting down to 1 year. And,
Absolutely.
kind of like people want to say, well, it worked out with Paul George and it worked out. We'll see if it works out with Kawhi, but, it's, I think he does have good memories and feels warmly about the organization, but I also think he knows that in his prime, if he's going to chase the biggest prize, that he needs to do so somewhere else. The organization has just not shown that it's capable of collecting talent, evaluating players well enough to put a group of players around him that kind of get him an opportunity to really chase, like I said, a championship. So I personally admire him for handling it the way he has. The media will do with it what they want, and some media outlets like to make it like super controversial. They will find any way to make it controversial. But for me, I just don't think it's really that controversial. I think he's realizes, yep, it's not going to happen here. But but I want to do as right by the organization that drafted me and that supported me up till now as I can. I think that's what he's done. So hopefully in the end, Pelicans fans will appreciate that. While I have to
Mhm.
acknowledge that it's easier for me to say than because, like you said, it's not happening to the team I root for.
Yeah. Remembering when Atlanta kind of went through this with the end of the Al Horford era, it was just kind of like one of those things where it's like the emotional side of you was like, why? How could he do this? But then the logical side of you could see what the Hawks were doing, and you were like, oh my goodness, guys, what Hawks, what are you doing? So I totally get what you're saying there. It's, I mean, they just couldn't put it, in my opinion, they just couldn't put a team around Anthony Davis. And you had him for so long and you knew like how good of a player he was. Just one thing that makes me think is just like, who's the best, I don't know, point guard that Anthony Davis has ever played with?
Yeah, it's tough
Yeah.
question to answer. I mean, because they've had a lot of guys there that were kind of like Drew Holiday. I love him as a player, but is he a point guard? He's kind of a point guard. He's had other guys there like Eric Gordon, kind
Yeah.
of play like a
That was,
point guard, but not really a point guard. So he's played with a lot of scoring guards, but not really a point guard that's going to kind of be a facilitator. Unless I'm just not remembering. So it would be interesting to see him. LeBron is basically a point guard and could work with him, or like if they decided to go to New York and say Kimba goes home and to New York, it would be interesting to see them play together. Kyrie's more of what he's had before, scoring point guard, although he's becoming more of a facilitator this year. So it's going to be fascinating to see where he ends. I'll pass along an unoriginal thoughts. I had my friend that I have on my podcast often, Dane Moore. He's actually co-host during the off season and the playoffs. But he said the one most important aspect to him is that he hopes that the result is not that the Pelicans don't trade him by the deadline and then don't play him all year because he's fun to watch. And it would suck if that was the outcome and that, NBA fans in general just didn't get to see one of the 10 best players play because of this kind of weird status. So I hope he gets traded selfishly as a fan because I want to watch him play. And if they don't trade him, I hope they let him play. Although I could kind of understand, from a business perspective, why you might entertain other thoughts about not playing him, keeping him from injury risk and things like that. But as a fan, I want to watch him play, and as such, I think the most likely route to that is a trade. So I hope it happens.
yeah. I heard he's going to the Warriors. No, I'm kidding. Um,
I actually was in my own head thinking about how hilarious it would be if he got traded for Draymond Green.
oh,
I'm not the biggest Draymond
that
Green
would
fan in the world, so
that would. I I have thoughts on Draymond Green, especially coming of what you see. I don't see how he holds up, but that's a whole other thought. But, so yeah, the Anthony Davis sweepstakes is interesting. We saw the tweet, the recent one. Now, what source is this? Because they I see something where they like quoted Anthony Davis's father about not he wouldn't want his son to go to Boston because
what I recall seeing was that Ramona Shelburne of ESPN was able to actually talk to him and got that quote, and he told her she could put that out there, make that public. So that, but his father was also specific to say, this is me talking. My son can talk for himself. I'm just telling you how I feel. And I don't know how honestly how Danny Ainge comes out of that IT situation without looking a little bit, uh, you know, people being skeptical of him. Business is business.
yeah,
But it's I I try to not, like I said, not have an emotional reaction one way or the other. But after it's weird the relationship that Isaiah Thomas has with quote the Hawks fan base because of the whole time he punched Dennis Schroeder, didn't get ejected, challenged Schroeder to a fight supposedly somewhere else in the arena. But then subsequent years he loses a sister very sadly, plays heroically in the playoffs, and it's hard not to kind of be won over by a guy that gives that much to his team. and such. So I hope he comes back and can be the player that he can be, because he kind of won me over. That
Yeah.
postseason where he was going through all the tragedy and all of the grief and all those sorts of things. So just the competitor he is, I admire that. But yeah, how you know is Danny going to trade Horford for AD? After all that Al's done in terms of a culture setter there. Maybe the NBA is just more cold blooded than I actually want to believe it is, but
Well,
we'll see. We'll see.
well, it would be terrible if you talk about players being traded, especially if this were last year, but if Gordon Hayward was on that list of guys to get moved, that would
But
be
yeah, but that would be further evidence that I try to separate Danny Ainge, the NBA executive, from the person, and not assume that the character traits cross those
yeah,
two different things. But yeah, like if he traded Gordon Hayward, just especially without consulting Gordon Hayward about where he would like to land if he's not able to be part of what they're trying to do there, that would just further provide evidence that Danny Ainge has no basketball soul.
yeah. Oh man, but hey, the assets they have, though, something I thought about. It's do you think he tries to move a I don't I'm pretty sure that this is impossible and I didn't even bother to look at it. But with all the recent hubbub and interest that interesting how Kyrie has been acting, is that a player that could be on the move in terms of a trade?
Well, that's the thing that's changed for me, like even in the last 48 hours, because my view of that situation going into the season was, if he's not committed to signing an extension after this season, and it's obvious why that they would want to wait till after this season so they can maximize the cap flexibility they would have, that Danny would trade him, if he wasn't committed to staying beyond the season. And Kyrie came in and talked like he was there, committed to be there for a long time.
Yeah,
Made the commercial about wearing the number 11 and wanting to be the last one to wear it, and and kind of leaning into a Celtics legacy that would be kind of the definition of the rest of his career. And then just in the last 24, 48 hours, he's gone on the record to say, ask me about free agency on July 1st. I'm only focused on this season. We're chasing a championship. But now I'm like, well, if he's just going to walk, is Danny just going to go ahead and offer him in a trade for AD? He can't trade for AD while Kyrie's on the roster, but if Kyrie's not committed beyond this year and AD is really the big prize, the big fish or whatever, how you want to call it, that
yeah.
AD has been wanting, so the next 5 days could get crazy. But it surprised me after seeing Kyrie step up and try to lead in the way that he knows how,
Yeah.
visibly on the court. It's looked constructive at times. It's looked less than constructive at times, but it looked like he was truly leaning into kind of being the alpha of the next phase of the Celtics, chapter in NBA history. But
Right.
now, after what I've heard the last couple of days, that seems to be very much an unsure thing.
Watching Kyrie this season, Kyrie has had a very just I mean just record-breaking season in the sense of his off the court, not basketball related stuff, just in the sense of all the sound bites and quotes he's given, his leadership style, especially with how he was talking. Hmm. I'm not a big fan of it, but whatever. He's his own guy, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah. I
it's
have
interesting.
I have no problem with a team leader talking to a guy being very honest. I don't know why one would kind of put so much of that out to the media. That doesn't seem constructive at all.
No, no, because I don't know, leaders some of the best kind of like leaders, are out there helpful. Like I'm assuming Tim Duncan was a great leader because you didn't hear nothing out of
Right.
him from about other players. He never went and said publicly after the team's big win to focus. Like I still can't believe he said the whole I called LeBron and told him what it took to win a championship. And it's like, dude, your team just won a big game and you somehow bring the focus back to yourself. That is just I had a lot of pent up thoughts since I haven't recorded in like 6 months, Glenn. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm getting them out now.
That's all right. That's all right. If you're going out, that's the way to go out, Josh.
Just a lot of thoughts. Just oh my goodness. But so moving on. Now, obviously the big trade. Now, maybe you can this seems like one of those like national events, like where you were. Like I was at work, just randomly turned my phone on during lunch, and I turned on my phone, looked at my Twitter account, and I saw the whole Kristaps Porzingis to the Mavs thing. I feel like people can recount where they were because it was an event that was like so all of a sudden, no news prior just brought up to it, and then boom, all of a sudden the Knicks' best asset was traded to the Mavs. Oh man.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird because I was, I got the Twitter notification pop up on my phone. I'm like, okay, here comes a rumor. Here comes a rumor. And I read it. I was like, that's not a rumor. It's news. And there was no, precursor rumors at all. It just kind of came out of nowhere. But yeah, it was at the moment surprising. I think looking back, not so surprising. Kristaps has had a rocky journey with that organization.
right.
For example, like I don't know if listeners know, but Josh Longstaff, who coached the Erie Bayhawks last year, was his personal player development coach, and the Knicks let him get away. You know, I would presume they could have offered him a higher, spot higher on the coaching staff to reserve him or not or what have you. And in my mind, that's and just folks know Josh Longstaff is still he's on Bud's staff in Milwaukee, so he's still with Bud. But that was kind of the beginning of the Knicks not really doing what teams normally do to guys they feel like is going to be their franchise player, which is consult them on everything, including, if Josh was to move on, how would you feel about it? Is there another coach what? And so the Knicks, it's a classic case. I know the front office has turned over at least once since they drafted him. But you really do have to take care of guys like that to make sure that they're in a good place when it comes time to look at their second contract.
Yeah. I think the funny thing to me is it was just like crazy that a couple of years ago, Phil Jackson was the one that wanted to, that was trying to trade him.
Yep.
And then now, to me, it was a wacky trade. I understand that you do it for cap space, but as we will find out in my belief through the rest of this podcast, and if you follow me on Twitter, I personally am not a gambler when it comes to stuff that you don't have or don't know the future of. I always go for the guarantee personally, because you don't know if some of the big names in free agency are going to come sign with you. I mean, ask the Hawks that year when they advertised to try to get Chris Paul and Dwight Howard. Didn't happen. But it's just, some of – and oh boy, I personally didn't like it for the Knicks, as probably I know the majority of people out there, but that's just because of my personal opinion of when you basically anything in life, but just for this, just like you don't know what's going to happen. Like now, unless the only thing I guess that would make sense is unless if you for sure know that Kevin Durant is coming to the Knicks next year, and which would mean that that's tampering, then yeah, go ahead and make the trade. But I was just kind of like, huh? Just Knicks. And It makes me wonder, because I had to go, was going to go look at this. I'm like, is this the same guy that when he got hired, he gave Tim Hardaway Jr. that ludicrous contract? But I, I don't know. Did you have any thoughts on the trade before we talk about possible impact of it?
Yeah, I mean, I see what the Knicks are trying to do, and there are two very interesting sides of how to look at it. First, the first side being it's New York. It's a huge market. It's a big platform. If you're
Right.
trying to kind of be at the top of the sneaker industry, deliver as much, sponsorship opportunities as you want, LA and New York is where you want to be. I think that's over the last 20 years, 10 years, I don't know, that's become a little bit kind of a flatter hierarchy, if you will, where like Russell Westbrook has no issues in a small market getting as much sponsorship and notoriety and fame and attention as he wants.
I was
But
about to bring something like that up to
yeah,
you.
but I do
Yeah.
think New York is still unique in that it does offer more than some measure more of that type of opportunity. So it's New York, but it's also the Knicks, and the Knicks
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
not their that brand is not strong at all. Their owner has been all over the place in terms of kind of setting a direction for the organization, or than just being totally hands off or claiming to be hands off when things are really going poorly. I don't know why he ever thought Phil Jackson, one of the greatest coaches of all time, would be a good GM. GMs tend to need to be hands off, day to day stuff, and those sorts of things. And Phil Jackson had a very firm philosophy around how the game was supposed to be played. Um, that new front office will have to convince a guy like Kevin Durant that, yeah, we truly are going in a new direction and we're turning the page, and the next chapter of the Knicks history is going to be one that you would want to be a part of. It's going to take an effort to convince a guy like that, but I do think that there is some opportunity. Kyrie's always talked about wanting to play in New York. And if Kyrie goes there, then it could mean that another superstar would want to go play there. I think that the biggest thing they have going for them is that um, basically every team that had a coaching vacancy last summer wanted David Fizdale, and the whole coaching market was held up until David Fizdale decided where he wanted to go. And I think Fizdale is a very strong asset that they have, and that the Knicks did well to get him because he's very well liked by players up and down the league. So there's things they have working for them, some things they have working against them. Was it worth trading Kristaps to get a super clean cap sheet? We can't answer that question now. We'll only be able to answer that question after we see what they do with that cap space. If they get kind of a couple of second tier free agents and are a 45 win team, then that probably is not how they hoped it would work out. But if they can land, two really good players and become an organization that can be competitive to make the finals year after year over the next 3, 4, 5 years or whatever, then they will have succeeded. So, but time will tell.
Now, on the plus side, the Dennis Smith Jr. athleticism that will probably go over well in New York. I will say that. And also, I guess the other argument you could say is Kristaps' injury history. Like, is he going to be one of those bigs that will just never get healthy just due to his body type?
That's definitely a risk. But he's talented enough,
Yeah.
like with Joel Embiid. The Sixers. He's too good for the Sixers to say he's not worth the risk. Kristaps is worth the risk, and when you get special talent like he offers, then I think you just have to say, I mean, it, you know, name some other great player in the league just randomly like Damian Lillard, right?
Yeah.
He could have a awful injury tomorrow, and that could so sometimes I think we do a little too much of suggesting that injury history it means that there's a ton of risk going forward. I think that you do have to account for some more risk than the average player, but some other random player who's never been injured could, something could happen. So you're always taking a risk when you pay players to get hurt anytime. But yeah, it'd be nicer if we'd seen like 3 full seasons of Kristaps so far, which we haven't. So, but I hope for him it works out. But there is some risk with that.
Yeah, and that was my attempt to help Knicks fans, but you kind of like debunked it right there. So never mind. I'm sorry. I tried. I tried to make it make sense for the Knicks. I'm just, I mean, I don't know. It's like you mentioned with Russell Westbrook in a smaller market. There are plenty of other players, kind of like in a not as big market, who will do really well if you're a good player. So I think shoot, well, LeBron is LeBron, so I don't know if that counts. But I was going to say it's not like Cleveland was a big market when him and Kyrie were there a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
But
but like Giannis in Milwaukee, Giannis is
yeah,
he would be getting a little more probably if he were in New York than Milwaukee, but it would be we're talking about what 3%, 5%,
yeah,
not a whole lot more. It might be marginal, but again, he's so good that he's not having any trouble finding all the sponsorship opportunities he probably wants to get his hands on. It's a mid-sized market. It's a city not known for. Uh, I've been there a number of times because it's so close to where I live, and I enjoy this city. But it doesn't come to mind of top places people want to visit on vacation or what have you, or want to live. A lot of that comes down to climate and such. But yeah, he's Giannis. If he spends his whole career in Milwaukee, will not lack for those opportunities for sure.
right. And I imagine players, one, I imagine that players actually pay attention to the news nowadays. So they'll look at the Knicks and be like, "Huh, so you're getting ex NBA players kicked out of the arena and banned. That's awesome." And two,
Yep.
it's not like players live in I'll say live during the off season in the cities that they play for.
Right.
So I don't know. Take it as it is, because it's like you have a lot of players who go play for other teams or just celebrities in general, but how many of them have homes in Atlanta kind of thing? But they don't play for the Hawks, or how many
Yep.
have homes in LA, but they don't play for the Lakers.
Yeah,
It's
I would bet at least 60% of the players in the NBA live in LA.
yeah.
That many.
Yeah, they all have homes out there.
Yep.
But so moving on, I wanted to get to the topic now. So now that Porzingis is in Dallas, and Dallas has that top 5 protected pick that goes to Atlanta. Obviously, if they land outside of the top 5, for those of you that don't know, if the Dallas gets a top 5 pick in next year's draft, they keep it. If not, it comes to us. Yes, bring on the picks. But does this Porzingis trade affect it at all? Will we see Porzingis back this year?
I think they announced yesterday that he is unlikely to play this year. I don't think they totally closed the door. I think that if they just kind of didn't collaborate with Kristaps on that at all, that would kind of get them off to a bad start with him. I think Kristaps wants to play. And so the word I think I recall yesterday was unlikely, but it made it sound like maybe the last 5 games or so he might play 50 minutes a game or what have you. So, but it appears he's not going to move the needle at all on Dallas's ability to win games. Tim Hardaway Jr. Is he going to help them? We all know Tim Hardaway Jr. There are some games he's helpful. There are some games where he's not as helpful. Courtney Lee, decent, solid player, but still trying to get back to fully healthy. And from what I've seen of him, he's not, really very close. When JJ Barea went down, that really, really hurt Dallas a lot. He was really a key to, if you go look on NBA.com stats, he was a part of like almost all of their most productive lineups. And then he and Luca were really good together. Rick Carlisle would kind of sneak that into his game plan and not really play those two together in the first half, but play them together a lot in the second half, and was getting wins that way. So I don't think it really changes course for them very much.
Uh-huh.
When the over under came out at 34.5, I had said I liked that as one of my favorite overs. Um, Primarily based on the fact that they were not trying at all last year. And it was to the level that they got fined for not trying at all. They got fined for tanking.
Right.
They're sitting at 23 wins. They're on, I think the over under was 34.5. And I think they're kind of tracking towards about 34, 35 wins. So I'd be surprised if it wasn't in the vicinity of that, 33 to 35 wins when we get to the end.
Huh. Well,
And also, if they're going to play Dirk, I love Dirk, but Dirk is not helpful. He's such a liability on defense. So it also comes down to, well, once they are presumably mathematically eliminated from playoffs, they start doing things, ceremonious things like playing
right.
Dirk, and things like that, and then that might result in them losing a few more games than they might have otherwise won.
Well, my big fear is watch they're gonna have the sixth worst record and watch they possibly at the number six spot, but then Tim Hardaway Jr. goes and wins them like 2 games down the stretch against other tanking teams. That's that's my big fear. But
Well, and then the lottery balls too, right? It's like the ping pong balls. It's if
right,
they end up sixth, that's pretty close for comfort of them. If they move up one spot at all, the Hawks don't get the pick. So would you
yeah,
prefer them to be like eighth or ninth or what have you? And there's the rest that they slip to 12 or 13, or So
right,
the
right.
big
Okay,
ping pong balls make it so. So I'm not really too focused on it. What I understand is that they want the pick to convey this year, which means they're probably going to chase wins if that's the case. But we'll see. DeAndre Jordan was not really helping them a lot. They played much better statistically when like Dwight Powell's at the five, when Maxi Kleba is at the five. So their defense might get better, and they might actually win more than 34. But we'll see. But I think it'll be in kind of a safe range that the Hawks get the pick, but also in a range where it might not be like 6, 7, 8. So that's my feeling.
you're right. Okay, okay. Well, we will see for the rest of the season, but it definitely does make sense that this would be the season they wanted to convey because definitely in the future, yeah, it would make sense. So that all said, so we see how that affects Atlanta. Is there anything Atlanta wise, like Hawks wise, that you could see coming up in a trade conversation or trade deadline coming up, like a player like Kent Bazemore or Torrin Prince or Dwayne Dedman or heck Jeremy Lin possibly getting moved?
Well, that's kind of the funny part of the Knicks and Mavericks trade because um, presumably the Knicks are going to buy out both DeAndre Jordan and Wes Matthews, and so um, that means teams might wait to see where those guys land before they really go out and commit assets, whether it be young players or draft picks, to trade for someone, for example, on the Hawks roster. So that kind of depresses the market a little bit for what the Hawks might do because there's two freebies out there, depending upon what you think of each of those. I mean, Dwayne Dedman is a completely different type of player, So, like, if a team is looking to add shooting at the five position, DeAndre Jordan's not going to be the guy you're looking at. Dedman's a solid shooter for his position on an expiring contract. Jeremy Lin's on an expiring contract. And, I don't think the Hawks should just trade them for whatever they can get. There is something to be said for continuity, and there's an impact, I think, to the young players on the roster to play along with these veteran players that have good habits, that are team minded, that play hard, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's something to be said for letting these young guys, and also, this season is also about Lloyd Pierce, kind of learning what it takes to be a head coach. This is his first season. I'm sure he's learning and growing, and continuity of players for him, I think, is helpful. Now, that doesn't mean that they should absolutely not consider it a trade. I just think there's a cost there that sometimes people, I believe in, that sometimes people, I think, don't acknowledge. For example, was another example I had was like the Grizzlies are shopping Marc Gasol, and I was talking with someone today about, I think the Grizzlies have to consider the value of having Jaren Jackson Jr. play his entire rookie season along with Marc Gasol.
Right. Yeah.
There's some value to that.
Definitely
Um,
there is. Yes.
yeah. So, but I would put Lynn and Dedmon in the category for me, and this is just me talking. Of I wouldn't trade them for just any random second round pick, especially if it's going to like a team that's competitive. Say, for example, if it's like a Philadelphia or a Portland or a Milwaukee or whatever, first of all, they don't need any more picks this year. They already have five. I don't think there's any way they're going to have five brand new rookies on the roster next year. They're going to have to stash or trade out into other years or combine them and trade up or whatever they're going to do. But I would want the pick to be more in the 31 to 45 range if I'm going to move on from Dedmon or Lynn. That's how I feel about it. Players 46 through 60. Sometimes they become really viable, but if you look mathematically, usually not. So again, I value Trae Young getting to play along with these veteran guys his entire rookie year. But if someone makes an offer that has some value, I think you have to weigh it against that. I would not be surprised to see if either of those are traded. Bazemore is a trickier thing because you're likely going to have to take back money that goes beyond this season. There are not very many contracts at all. I think you count them on one hand, of players who have expiring deals that kind of fit the salary matching requirements. And most of those guys are guys that I believe teams want to keep, like, Tobias Harris comes to mind. I don't think the Clippers are looking to move on him. I think they're looking to use his bird rights to sign him to the contract this summer and keep him. So, how do you feel about that salary coming back? And can you get a first? Can you get two first? Can you get a first and a nice second draft pick? So it just depends. But I'm personally not going to be upset if they do nothing at the deadline. That's probably different from how other fans feel. Is like, well, why let Lynn walk for nothing? It's like, to me, it's not for nothing. It's for having continuity around the critical year of development for young players, and that's worth something to me. So I won't be upset if they do move them for something of value, but I'm also not going to be upset if they do nothing.
Okay. Right. Well, we will see. We got less than a week, and we'll see what happens with that. See what giant trades come around. Though you are right when you did bring up the whole DeAndre Jordan, Wesley Matthews thing. Them getting signed, I was like, dang, there goes the value in some players. If Wes Matthews gets bought out, there definitely goes the trade value in some players just because he's out there, just because a team like, I don't know, Houston or something could just up and sign him if they wanted, which.
Yeah, and Kent Bazemore's better than Wes Matthews at this point in his career, but he's marginally better. And if you can get Wes Matthews on a minimum contract after he's bought out, then when you don't have to give up draft picks or young players for Bazemore, then you're going to go that route and go down the Wes Matthews route. So I think the Bazemore market will be completely uncertain. It'll be on hold, if you will, until Wes Matthews lands where he lands. There may be some relationship between DeAndre Jordan and Dwayne Dedman, but because they're such differently skilled players, that there might be less of a thing there. But I definitely think the Wes Matthews impacts kind of the baseball market.
Yeah. Um, well, we'll see. Maybe Philly might be a team to look out for in this upcoming week. But so speaking of that, because you brought up Jeremy Lin, so there has been some discussion on my Twitter page and amongst other fans that I am a huge Jeremy Lin hater. I've been told that I just hate everything about Jeremy Lin, including the fact that I'm sure somebody has said that I hated him because he was too big to be a point guard. I don't know, something weird like that. So
Well, Josh, there's only two categories. You either think the guy is the greatest player in the history of the NBA, or you're a hater. So
yeah,
if
yeah,
you don't think he's the greatest player in the history of the NBA, you're a hater. So but you're a hater, Josh.
yeah. It's kind of funny because isn't that how we evaluate quarterbacks in the NFL? They're
Right,
either top three or they suck.
right.
but but anyway, so earlier in the year, Jeremy Lin was traded to the Hawks. I took the stance saying that I hated the trade because they basically took on Jeremy Lin's salary to help another team get a first round pick. And that would be who is the team? Okay, Brooklyn got. I'm going off the top of my head. I don't have anything pulled up right now, but I believe it was Brooklyn would be receiving the pick from Dallas, not Dallas, excuse me, Denver in 2 years. Um, because they took on the contract of Kenneth Fareed and who's the other player? Is it Darrell Arthur? But anyway,
Yeah, yeah,
anyway,
yeah. You're right. They're all off there, Arthur. Yeah.
okay, okay. But anyway, I stated at the time I hated the trade because I said, why would the Hawks want to help another team get a lottery pick? Not, excuse me, not a lottery pick, but get a first round pick when they could just go do it themselves. And I've been argued against saying that Jeremy Lin is a great mentor and leader for Trey Young. To which I argued you could literally get that from I don't know any other point guard or have a good coach and help him out. But I don't know. I know I'm in a percentage of people that think it's bad trade. I do see the value in having Jeremy Lin, but I don't know. Let's revisit this. Should the Hawks have taken that extra draft pick in a year? Now, granted, it'd be a late round draft pick, or should we be happy with the 1 year of Jeremy Lin? Like I don't know what to think.
I mean, I honestly think that the deal the Hawks made was reasonable. I know we've seen Sam Hinkie and Danny Ainge just get as many picks as they possibly can. Um, but what I think Hawks fans don't realize is that they got two second round picks in the deal, and one of them is pretty attractive. I think it's 2023 that the Hawks they actually got three. They have three second round draft picks as a result of the deal. Two of them were explicitly a result of this deal. But I think 2023 between Atlanta, Charlotte, and Brooklyn, the Hawks get the two best second round draft picks in that draft. So like Charlotte could be terrible by then. And so they could be drafting like 31, 32, 33, depending on how things go in Charlotte. Brooklyn looks to be trending upward, and I would guess that Brooklyn is likely to be better than Atlanta in 2023 if things continue to go well for them. But you never know. I mean, we don't know if they're going to re-sign D'Angelo Russell. If they do, is he going to continue improving the way he has this year? They have a few interesting young pieces, but but the front office and coaching, that's all solid. They have a solid plan. They're executing a solid plan. So they did get some draft, assets in that trade. But what we don't know is that did they even have the opportunity to make that trade? We don't know. So it's sort of order of operations goes all kind of, a set of moves that collectively was put together. But is the value having Jeremy Lin help Trae Young for a year? Yeah, that's something that's more qualitative than quantitative to me. So it's hard to evaluate. But I was not upset by the trade. They have a ton of draft picks, and if they do solid evaluation, like they've drafted pretty well the last 2 years. I think they have enough draft picks to kind of make the most of them. But on the other side, if someone wants to make the argument you can never have too many first round draft picks, then I'd say that's a fair argument. So, you know me, I'm not going to be a hot take kind of person, but I was fine with the trade. But I also acknowledge that some people might feel like they passed up a better opportunity. So,
I
I
was
would
trying to
have
get
been
you
fine
there.
either way. So,
I was trying to get you there. I was trying to get you on the hot take cannon, but
yeah,
it was a trap. You didn't fall for it. Good job. This was
I,
all a test.
I think Sam may deliver a bit more of that entertaining type of takes in your segment with him.
Oh man. Yeah. But
Sam,
no,
Sam's not that was not a criticism.
yeah,
That's just my personality. Sam is a ton of fun. So yeah,
great personality.
you guys
Yeah.
should have a ton of fun in that talk. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I see, I see the value and if they come out, and they say Jeremy Lin was extremely helpful to the growth of Trae Young because we've seen growth through this season. If you only watch Trey's first 10 games and then watch his last 5, you can definitely tell the difference in the player.
Yeah,
And
and there have been games that they've been in, and games that they won, where Coach Pierce made the decision. Trey, you go sit down and watch Jeremy close this game. And I one specifically comes to mind, a win they got in Washington, where Coach Pierce had the option of believing it's going to be better for Trey to sit and watch this game, the last 6 minutes of this game, for example, than to be out there in it. And I've coached before, and I had obviously not on that level, but there are times when you need a player to sit and watch someone else do what you're asking of the team so they can visualize it and get a better understanding from watching it happen, watching the execution happen. So, it is a valuable part of Trae Young's development. On top of that, before the season, when we were kind of do a series of roundtable articles, kind of predicting things or what have you, I think I was the only one that said I thought Jeremy Lin would start in the beginning of the season if healthy. And one of the reasons I had in mind at the time was that I thought they should have a minutes limit on Trae Young because he's so small and he needs to get stronger. I thought there was some undue risk around injury if they just let him play like 2,500 minutes or so. And I was thinking they should probably limit it to like 1,800, but I think he's already north of 1,500. But he's changed my mind also because he's a lot stronger than I thought he was already.
yeah,
I mean, he really is impressively physical with the ball in his hands, especially.
drawing the amount of contact he draws, and he already has the thing of where he can get a player on his hip to draw a foul, and he keeps getting up. He keeps getting up, hasn't gotten hurt. But
and he'll get the guy on his hip or get the guy on his butt, and he'll be pushing and creating space by being physical, and that's been a really surprising and impressive part of what he's done. So I'm less concerned about that now. Before the season, I thought there should be a plan to really track his workload and to give him one full NBA summer to get his body kind of ready for an entire season. But he's shown me he's a lot stronger and more physical than I thought he would be his first year.
right, he's doing stuff that took previous players on Atlanta. It probably took them 3 or 4 seasons to learn in terms of being physical and keeping players off of you. I'm very impressed by his durability. I will say that. I'm very impressed by that. Like, I could not have imagined. And the fact that he goes for it's not like watching him in college, I thought he was like not athletic and I thought he was slow. But now that I have seen more of him, which I don't watch college. I don't watch college hoops. Watching more of him, it's more as he shifts his speed in the sense to work to draw contact. It's not like he's continuously getting caught. He's purposely slowing down. So at times, so he can like get some extra contact on a layup, so he can go for the and one or to get the extra point.
Yeah, and that's interesting because
Yeah,
the modern players, like the guys that evidently the last 3 years or so, kind of have a collective reputation of they don't watch other NBA games, they don't watch other NBA players, they don't love the game and in the form of watching it. But when you watch Trae Young play, you can see he studied Chris Paul. He does things that Chris Paul
right,
in his first year, he's
right.
using techniques that we've seen Chris Paul use forever. And to me, that's encouraging. That tells me he's mentally invested in pursuing greatness and trying to replicate what he's seen in other great players. And that's something that, again, before this season, I didn't know anything about kind of his mental approach to the game, but that's been an impressive aspect as well.
Yeah, his dribbling ability. With him dribbling, I saw Chris Paul. I was like, okay. And then going under the basket, taking the ball out and either looking for the shot or looking for the big to catch the ball off the double team. I've seen Steve Nash do that, and
And
those are the two guys that I see.
yeah,
When
and
I see him play.
he also reminds me a little bit of Tony Parker when he drives across the paint and comes out on the other side looking for the pass.
Right, right. Darn. I guess that leads us to our next final segment before we get your thoughts for rest of the season. Just the young guys on the team. Real quick, give me like your 20-second, 30-second thoughts. Will John Collins be on the next Bucks team?
I think yes, he will. I think he'll be the starting power forward the next time the Hawks make the playoffs, and will also be there hopefully the next time the Hawks are a threat to go fairly deep in the playoffs. But it will very significantly depend upon roster construction because I just don't think he's ever going to be even an average defender. He could become a good team defender, but in terms of an individual defender, I think if he got the average, that would be an unexpected outcome. He just doesn't have the length that most players at that position have. He's 6'10" and has like 6'10" wingspan, so he doesn't have that like +4, +5 wingspan that a lot of players that play at that position has. Like think about a guy like Pascal Siakam or whoever, right? And I wrote a piece on Peachtree Hoops about a month back, I think, about what type of big man the Hawks should put next to John Collins, and that other big man to play next to him to start and play a majority of minutes next to him, in my mind, needs to be a rim protector, needs to be a dominant defensive rebounder. John Collins does okay. He's an awesome offensive rebounder. He does pretty well right now as a defensive rebounder. But if he develops into being kind of a special offensive player, players have to kind of pick and choose where they put their energy. And that isn't, I'm not talking about telling a guy don't play hard all the time.
Right.
The best players know how to kind of know where to invest their energy for maximum impact. And if he could be less needed to help the team do well in the area of defensive rebounding, it would help him, I think, have more to offer offensively. And so, I do think he'll be there, but I think that they need to find a very particular type of player to play next to him in that front court.
Yeah, if only the Hawks could trade with the Knicks for Porzingis. Ah, darn it. um, okay. Yeah. John Collins. I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about John Collins. I really like him as a player. I like him as a person in the sense that he's the only NBA player I've ever kind of like, I guess you could say, rooted for that had a parent in the military and has lived on multiple bases.
Yeah,
like
and
I have. So I will say that. He is fantastic around the rim.
Yeah, he is.
It's just like he does certain things with finishing that you don't realize how hard it is until you actually go out and try it on your own. and he's doing it in his second year. And I believe it was your article that you wrote where you made mention that it's like he's too big to be the traditional, not traditional, but the modern day power forward. Those modern day power forwards that can slip and play the three, but he's too small to be, I guess you'd say, a center. He's kind of in the no man's land, like right now. 10
Yes.
years ago, I'd imagine there'd be more definite of a fit for him, but I believe you wrote this. Does that sound familiar at all?
It sounds like something I it is something I think, and it probably is something I slipped in to that piece about what kind of player they need to put next to him. So it's probably in that piece. But a lot of like what his total value will be, before last night's game, he was shooting 40% from the 3-point line. I don't think that's a realistic goal for him, but could he be a 37% shooter? You know, a lot will come down to whether or not he can knock down, a good percentage of 3-point shots. Because when you get, the old heads, the old guard will say when you can find a scorer that can score at all three levels, so at the rim, in the mid range, with a face-up game or back to the basket game, and at the 3-point line, that's when you have a special offensive player. And he's showing some possibility that he could become that, but they need in order for that to work, in terms of that being the way that the next really good Hawks team is configured, they need a really good defensive five and a really good defensive three to help reduce what they would need from him on defense.
Whoops, I muted myself because I didn't want to make too much noise because I thought that was gold, what you were saying. So sorry, guys, for that delay. No, yeah, I agree with you. And then also, obviously, I mean, it's going to be obvious that Trae Young's going to be on the next good Hawks team. Like, unless a deal came along, his
Yeah,
value his value is super high right now.
it is, but like John Collins, he has
Yeah,
the liabilities, and he always will. And so the players that they put next to him. So, for example, I don't think Tyler Dorsey is going to be on this team for very long because he just
nope.
really can't play with Trae. So Herder was a great draft pick. He's got solid length. He's actually not as long as he kind of looks. He makes the most of his length, but he's a big guard.
He's a big guard, yeah.
And he could handle bigger defensive assignments. But they'll need another one or two wings that can kind of help defensively, to offset the defensive liability of Trae. So Trae at the one, John at the four. Good two-way players, 2 and 3, specifically a really good defender that can handle the three, like the big small forwards in the league, and then a really good five is, I think, what they're going to have to add to get the roster to a point where it's something that's real.
Like, yeah, because it's not like just John that you would need to surround the players with. It's Trae as well, since they both kind of have, they're both fantastic offensive players, but defensively, in order to round the team out, you need the Eastern Conference Player of the Month, Damari Carroll, at the three.
Absolutely.
That version of him, that would be a perfect fit. But oh boy, which makes watching Taurean Prince very interesting.
Yeah, I've tried to have an open mind about Torian since he came back from injury, hoping that they kind of just had time to talk to him about what he should be doing and how he should be trying to contribute. And since he's come back, I've seen some stretches where it's like, okay, it looks like he's kind of got his head on straight. And there's other times where it's like, this looks like the old Torian. And so I guess it'll take the rest of the season if he's not traded in the next 5 days. I'm not going to be shocked. If you ask me who's the player most likely to be traded in the next 5 days, I would have to think about putting Prince's name out there, because teams are more willing to give up real stuff for a player they can control. But yeah, to me, before the season, when I was on Brad's podcast, I talked about the fact that this will be the year that we'll figure out if Torian can achieve any consistency at all because he's one of the most inconsistent players in the league. Not just in terms of whether he's making a shot or not, but whether he kind of has his head on straight, whether he's engaged in the game and focused on doing things that contribute to winning basketball, not just him doing impressive basketball stuff.
Not just dribbling the ball out and watching the ball go in his hands, and because there are those stretches. I mean, Torian has fantastic. He has very good stretches, and then he also has some that you're just kind of like, why are you dribbling the ball? Or you look at him get the ball, and you just know like he's not going to pass the ball.
Yeah, or like there's been times even since he's come back that the Hawks, good 5-6 minutes in the first quarter, the ball's moving really well, moving really well. Torian goes in the game and then the ball stops. And
Yeah,
it's like, how do you not know?
yeah,
that,
it's
that's going to be a problem, But there's other times where he went in and he helped move it. It never moves quite as well with him. He's kind of a methodical decision maker, even when he's at his best. But that is kind of frustrating. On the defensive side for Torian, he's a much more functional defender in a switching defense. He's been a pretty terrible defender in a non-switching defense. And with Philadelphia, the Sixers in the playoffs played almost exclusively switching defenses and played a lot of switching across the season. So it also comes down to scheme in terms of how much value Prince has. But I'm not going to be surprised if he's not on the team, past the next season or so.
so Prince for Markel Fultz, just hypothetically, what
I would do it.
What would you say? Well, you are Travis Schlenk. You are in the no. You are going to go talk to Travis Schlenk. Just hypothetically, you get the offer. You know how you feel about Prince, and you know everything you've heard about Markel Fultz, and you are basically just straight up. What would you suggest? What would you say to Schlenk, Travis
I,
Schlenk?
I would say make the trade. I would say the upside of Fultz is, we're not sure that Torian Prince is ever going to be like an average starting quality small forward. Uh, Markel Fultz was a consensus top pick in a draft. We don't know what's going on with that shoulder. We really don't know what he is in terms of kind of his mental makeup. But thankfully, our head coach spent all of last season on the team that Markel Fultz was on. So I would
I was about to
definitely,
say that. Good job.
yeah, I would defer to definitely want the input of Lloyd Pierce, and if Lloyd Pierce feels like he has the work ethic and the kind of the mental makeup to get through this. And I also think that given what's going on with Markel, that a new environment might be really good for him. Uh, Also, I don't know if Markel Fultz and Ben Simmons ever would have really kind of maximized each of their own individual capabilities or not, because Ben absolutely has that ball in his hands to add value on offense. Well, that's probably 80% true. He's a good cutter. He's good in the dunker spot, but he has way way more value as a passer and a playmaker. And then hopefully, Trey right now needs the ball to have value, but hopefully, 2 years down the line, that's not always the case. That he'll develop the ability to have value off the ball as well, as a catch and shoot threat. So it would be interesting to see kind of Trey, Herder, Fultz, kind of share backcourt minutes, and Fultz could crash and burn. That's certainly a possibility, but I think I would say make the trade.
I would say do it because I mean I agree. I saw this the other day and I thought about it for a second and I thought about the points Lloyd Pierce, former coach. Also, I thought about, hey, you're in Atlanta. His rookie year, Markel Fultz, they were expected to make the playoffs and kind of like have some sort of run into the playoffs. He wasn't dependent as the main guy, but obviously they needed him and they relied on him. I would just say, hey, pressure's off. You're in Atlanta. That's I don't know. That's another thing. Feel free to make a mistake and don't get worried about getting benched.
Yeah,
Like,
Trey's
yeah,
had games where he shot 1 for 9 and turned the ball over 6 times, and nobody freaked
yeah,
out.
yeah. Well, besides the fans, but
Yeah,
no, yeah,
but they freaked out temporarily until he came back and had another good game, and then realized, oh, that's how rookie seasons go.
yeah, yeah. So that's what I would say. It would make sense for to me. It would definitely make sense for I guess Philly if they do the switching defense, like you mentioned. That that would be great. Give another defender on the perimeter, and then you also have a guy. If you could convince Prince, you got a fantastic catch and shoot player.
Yep.
Um, so that everyone wants one of those. So yeah, that's interesting. Um, I looks like we're running out of time on our end, and man, we have been going just two nerds talking about Hawks basketball here. Let me get one final thing from you. Um, what is your rest of season outlook? Just give me your thoughts on the rest of the season. Any expectations or something you want to look out for, or something you want to tell fans to look for on the court?
Yeah, so I'm right now. I'm most closely watching TP just because he just came back from injury, and I've been very curious if they've been able to kind of rework his mental approach to the game. And like I said, there's some evidence that yes, there's some evidence that he's not implementing it. Um, but then I think Spellman is an interesting guy to watch. Now he's going to have to completely remake his body if he's going to be a real NBA player. But when you watch the action the Hawks run with either in the pick and roll or their horns action, it's typically Trey cutting off of a screen with a dribble. One big goes to the 3 point line, one big goes to the rim. And Amari Spellman has definitely the highest ceiling by far of any of the Hawks bigs in terms of perimeter shooting. He could be a legit north of 40% 3 point shooter. And that's why they drafted him. He's also a very good passer. But like he's gonna have to like try to lose like 30 pounds or whatever this offseason to be able to move on defense successfully. But just yeah, I'm watching Amari to see if the decision making improves and all that sort of stuff. Trey, I think if he just keeps doing what he's doing, if he replicates the second half of the season is basically like the first half of the season, with maybe just cutting down his turnovers a little bit, improving his shot selection just a little bit. But I'm not going to be, unhappy if he just kind of replicates what he has. And then Herder's confidence, he's gone on record and said, he basically didn't have any confidence at the end of the season. He thought it would take 2 or 3 years before he really belonged on the court. But he's good. Man, he's good. He's really good. And just seeing him kind of develop confidence and have confidence in his playmaking and his shooting, and then just getting more mistake free on the defensive end. Rookies have to just do that through experience. There's really no other way to kind of get better as a defender apart from playing. You have obviously study and things like that, but I beyond that, does Bimry take a step offensively? I wrote a piece earlier about how he's going to have to improve his finishing at the rim if he's going to have the offensive value to be a real rotational player on a good team, and that's still something that I don't think the case is either open or shut on that. I think the jury is still out on that. So those are the things I'm watching for the rest of the year.
Okay. All right. Great. That's a whole lot of stuff, guys, for you guys to watch. Obviously, also outside of possible trades, but
True.
yeah, lots of stuff to watch this year. Glenn, it says if this season is a fun season, watch the Hawks, even though they're not good. It's almost as if.
It's fun. I hope the second half is as fun. Sometimes the season starts to feel a little bit long, but they've won games here and there that on paper they had no business winning.
Right.
And the people who are hoping for a draft pick, like for example, that really close loss in Toronto was like maybe the ideal outcome some Hawks fans want. It's like they played really well. They went toe to toe with one of the best teams in the league, but they got the else, which helps their ping pong ball situation. So
Yeah.
I think more fun ahead the rest of the way. I'm looking forward to every single game that's left on the schedule.
And I'm looking forward to more nights where I kind of like have a complete 180 from my thoughts at the beginning of the year in terms of, okay, like just the other night against like the Jazz and Portland and I don't know, a couple other teams. But there have been times where I'm just watching the Hawks game, looking in the fourth quarter. I'm like, okay, they have to get Trae Young back on the floor because he's the only playmaker that we have that can get the other guys going, at least on offense. And then I had to stop myself and said, wait, what did I just say? um,
I get caught up in it too. It's like, oh,
yeah,
and it's not because I'm being dumb. It's like
yeah,
you see them playing so hard and
right,
working so hard, and they're chasing a W, and you want it for them. That's kind of where you end up as a fan. Is like, okay, they're really playing really hard and working really hard, and they want this win, and then usually if you're watching, if you're like me, you end up wanting them to get that win and get the satisfaction of the win.
right.
But if they don't get it, the next day you realize, oh, not so bad.
Yeah, and if that's true, and then it's also I don't know, it's also fun just looking at this and be like, I'm not trying to like I don't know talk too much, but I legitimately think this is the best crop of young players I think I've seen this team have since I've started watching, watching the Hawks play. Like, I'll talk myself into certain players being good. Like I was like, Jeff, he's going to be really good, and talk yourself into him because you see the athleticism for those first 3 years. Dennis, because in summer league he has those times when he's a good passer. But I'm just looking at this, I'm like, wow, they're actually like doing stuff that's I mean, credit the developmental coaches on this, and credit everyone for making me look wrong and bad and terrible 6 months later. So I guess I was wrong on a lot of it, but that's a topic I'll get more into if I can get Sam on later on. But yeah, Glenn, thank you for joining me. What what do you have to plug? Because I know you're always recording and doing stuff.
Yeah, so my Greg, who also writes the piece for you, we have a podcast we record weekly, Full Court Press podcast. We tend to cover the whole league and kind of stay away from the national narratives, not because they're not interesting, but because they're covered elsewhere. And we kind of lean on our coaching background, and we have our stuff is a little bit more technical in nature. We're not necessarily pursuing kind of an entertaining podcast, if you will. Hopefully, we're not totally boring, but we do tend to focus on the technical. The next episode that will come out will be one that I recorded with our third partner, Dane Moore, who's a credentialed reporter. He covers the Timberwolves here in Minneapolis.
Right.
But we did a trade deadline preview episode that we recorded that should come out on Monday. So, and then all my writing is at Peace for Hoops. So a lot of good writers there. Proud to be one of them. But I presume if you're listening to this that you probably are aware of that. But I thoroughly enjoy being a part of a team that helps cover the Hawks on that website. Awesome, fun team to be a part of. So yeah, that podcast and then my writing at Peace for Hoops. That's where to find me.
Great. Well, I just added Full Court Press to my queue. I don't know why I never had it on there, but I like just added it to my queue on my phone. So you have one more subscriber as of right now.
And I thank you very much. I'm grateful for every single listener we have. We have a not huge, but we have our dashboard tells us we have a fairly loyal listenership. But we are certainly thankful for the listeners we have because we do get enough ad revenue to kind of offset most of the costs to produce the show, which is good. I don't have the time to do like editing and production stuff, things like that. So I pay a small company to do that, but it for the listenership helps us kind of operate a cost neutral thing, which is all we ever had in mind. We're not looking to get rich through that means whatsoever.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on, and well, it's been fun. I'm starting to tear up right now, but
Yeah, yeah. I hope this is just a temporary thing for you, whether it's a few years down the line or what have you. But congratulations on a great run, and I've been honored to be on the handful of times I've been on. And yeah, you're a really good podcaster. I'll never be as
oh,
good.
thank you.
I'll never be as good of a podcaster as you are. You got a great voice and a really entertaining style. So it'll be missed. But also, congratulations on what you accomplished to it. So I hope you'll be able to get Sam on, because I would very much look forward to hearing the two of you talk as well. So hope that
One
works
one day
out.
I'll be back. I'll probably still do the live streams once or twice a year, but
Yeah,
yeah, recording.
and I'll have to have you on mine, like maybe during the summer when there's not a lot going on, maybe after the draft, and just I think it would be good for my listeners to have an entertaining voice on now and then. So maybe I might reach out at some point and say, hey, you want to come on my show, and give you the opportunity to kind of uh, podcast, but not have to run the whole operation.
Oh, I'd be honored for that.
We'll do it. It's just gonna happen.
Great. Well, thank you guys. I don't know if I'm going to do two parts to this. I might make it one long extravaganza, but tune in for part two. And thank you. Thank you once again. We'll be back.